Hey, welcome back to our Achievement Hunter series aimed at assaulting the Stormwind gameplay achievements. We rated the warrior achievements last time, and this time there are 3 warlock achievements ready to form a Dark Alley Pact. Let's get into it. This should be interesting. For today's video, we're covering the following 3 warlock achievements. Simply Enchanting, hiring us to reduce cards cost in our hand by 240 mana with runed mithril rods. My Little Dreadsteed, lassoing us into having Tamsin's Dreadsteed return 8 times in one game. And Share Your Pain, summoning our services to ultimately redirect 666 damage from our hero to our opponent using Blightborn Tamsin. None of these requires that we win games to complete, so we can take unusual approaches to completing these if it makes things more interesting or efficient. All our guides include timestamps for each achievement and deck codes for each deck mentioned in the description below if you'd like to skip to one you're looking for. Now, let's begin our demonic studies. First up, let's do the achievement that's one and done, My Little Dreadsteed. For this one, Tamsin's Dreadsteed has to return at least 8 times in one game. I don't know if the initial appearance of her Dreadsteed coming from the dreaded mount counts as one of the 8, but I don't think so. Since the Dreadsteeds don't return until the end of the turn, if you were to play this in a straightforward manner with just one copy, you'd have to get it to die 8 times. Considering minigames right now don't make it past turn 7 or 8, that's a tall order. It does come back at the end of your opponent's turn as well, but there's no guarantee they'll keep killing it, so you'll want to come at this from a different angle. Our first recommended deck is in Standard, and we named it the Demon Steed. Original name, I know. So this deck runs the Demon Seed and Runed Mithril Rod so that you can get progress towards both of the other Warlock achievements while setting this one up. There are a few ways to get multiple Dreadsteeds onto the board at once to improve the speed of progress towards this one. Of course, we're running both copies of Dreaded Mount, but we also have Educated Elic in case things line up well. Raise Dead can often give an additional Dreadsteed, but at full cost, so 4 mana goes towards getting the extra into play. And Canrathod Prime can bring back a copy or 2, depending on whether you've played Manari Mosher. Tamsin's Dreadsteed is a good target for Touch of the Nathrezim in a pinch, and it's a good way to ensure one more progress towards the achievement if the opponent's board is clear. But with the Dreadsteed coming back at the end of the opponent's turn too, that means the Manari Mosher will have a guaranteed target to buff for healing as long as it's not frozen in place. This is the deck we used to complete the achievement, and we actually ended up summoning the Dreadsteeds back 14 times as they absorbed a few extra hits from Fel Barrage for us. But if you prefer to knock this out in Wild, we've got a little bit of a slower deck with a number of alternate ways of getting the Dreadsteeds. GalaMount Swarm. Playing Dreaded Mount on Echoing Ooze and a delayed resummon by Spirit Singer Umbra both help get additional copies. With wide board synergies alongside the Galakron package and spells meant to kill off your own minions, Dark Pact, Grim Rally, Plague of Flames, and even Mortal Coil in a pinch, it's easy to kill off your Dreadsteeds even if the opponent's board is clear, and you usually get quite the nice upside from it. When playing this out, we were lucky enough that we only ran into one Demon Seed Warlock that killed us on turn 5. Against other decks, playing the Plague of Flames clears into minion buffs worked much better than anticipated, allowing us to summon more than enough steeds to complete the achievement on the 3rd game. We won 2 out of the 3 games with this deck, likely because our opponents were shocked that we weren't playing the Demon Seed ourselves. But this was actually quite a fun deck to experiment with. Good luck taming your Little Dreadsteeds. Now, let's look at the achievement that took a painfully long time to complete. Share Your Pain. It wasn't painfully long because the decks we played were weak, but rather opponents often conceded as soon as we played Blightborn Tamsin and began redirecting the damage. There was also an issue with animations taking so long that we often failed to do as much damage as we could have, even when the opponent didn't concede. So this one's a bit of a different grind than the Pirates and Warrior. If you have the Demon Seed and you'd like to knock this out in Standard, we played this Quest to Burn Warlock deck from HSReplay after the first round of nerfs hit. I say first round because I'd be surprised if this archetype doesn't get hit with a second nerf. With a 72% win rate across 29 games to finish knocking out this achievement, netting us somewhere around 350 redirected damage across those games, this deck actually ended up pushing us to Legend. I don't usually play to Legend, but the condition to pull this off means you've nearly won the game by the time you're making progress towards it. So the grind took us to and through the final boss. We'll actually have a highlight video featuring a few of the final games with this deck on Thursday, so keep an eye out for that if you'd like to see more of this deck in action. It's not a meme or experimental deck, but it is fun to play, and it's a fairly efficient way to get progress towards this achievement. Now, before we get into an alternative option for anyone who doesn't have a copy of the Demon Seed, let's introduce a recommendation for Wild. This Broken Seed Warlock from HSReplay is one of the stronger builds for racing towards completing the questline in Wild. The footage here is from before the nerf, but the exact same list is still seeing play, and with an 82% win rate across 600 games at the time of writing the script for this, the deck appears to be doing better than it was before the nerfs, up from 78%. It's broken strong, hence the name for the deck. If you have the cards in Wild, this is likely to be the fastest deck to knock the achievement out. But what if you don't have a copy of the Demon Seed? When talking about options for the Juggernaut achievement last time, we mentioned that the quest lines aren't offered in duels buckets. Hearth Arena does show it as an option for Arena, and since there is a natural synergy with your hero power, that is an option if you love playing lots of games in Arena. But we also introduced a couple rogue decks last time oriented towards copying your opponent's mercenary, and both of those will allow you to get progress towards this achievement as well. As a rogue, if you have a dagger equipped when you copy Tamsin, you can usually get 7 or 8 progress right away by stabbing into a flesh giant or Tamsin. However, there's a good chance you'll only get 7 to 15 progress towards the achievement per game where you're able to copy Tamsin, so getting 666 damage for the third tier of this achievement would be kind of absurd. It's not an efficient way to do it, but it's an option if you're dead set on knocking this out without a copy of the questline. If you didn't catch the Warrior edition of our achievement guide, let me briefly reintroduce the copy options in our Whose Questline rogue deck. Depending on the timing and the opponent's play order during their turn, you can get a copy of Blightborn Tamsin from Plagiarize or Vanessa Van Cleef. Or you could copy her with Faceless Manipulator and bounce her with Shadow Step or Tenwu. If you're specifically after this achievement and not trying to get progress towards the Warrior, Priest, Rogue, or Demon Hunter achievements at the same time, a couple substitutions I'd recommend, which could buy you an extra turn or two to get additional progress towards this achievement, would be to swap Kazakis and Polkelt for 2 copies of Spice Bread Bakers. Your hand is often quite full, and she's a decently cheap heal, compared to Alexstrasza, which may also buy some time. Depending on how the opponent is dealing the damage, you may get an extra swing or 2 with daggers thanks to the heals. Again, this isn't an efficient way to knock it out, but it is an option. Editor Chop! So, after recording this, one of our viewers pointed out a really fun and very effective deck by Danehearth, which works wonders against Questline Warlock in particular. The idea for the deck is to use the discounts from Nazmani Bloodweavers, which you can get extra copies of with Gift of Luminance, Vivid Nightmare, and Resurrect, to make the cards in your hand cost next to nothing, allowing you to drop super cheap Gadget Zan Auctioneer and cycle through the deck like mad. You copy the opponent's mercenary with Seance, which likely gets discounted by any Bloodweavers you have sitting on the board, making it easier to play. Against Warlock in particular, the heavy cycle with Gadget Zan will allow you to do ridiculous fatigue damage to them. You can copy the Auctioneer a couple times after playing your Tamsin, using leftover versions of the copy cards mentioned a moment ago. The deck has a bit of a learning curve, but with the prevalence of Questline Warlock on the ladder in Wild, and the amount of damage you can rack up per game, I think this is a legitimate way to complete the achievement if you don't have the questline. Okay, now back to the original guide. Best of luck forcing opponents to share your pain. The third and final Warlock achievement before the mini set comes out is simply Enchanting. At first glance, reducing cards' costs by 240 mana with the Ruined Mithril Rod seems like a lot. But in practice, this one went really quickly. I guess that's because Warlock tends to have a decent number of cards in hand, meaning that when it triggers, it will often discount between 7 and 10 cards at once. Running 2 copies of the weapon means the discounts can trigger between 2 and 4 times per game, so it's actually pretty quick. If you have the Demon Seed and you're going after the other 2 achievements, the Demon Steed and the Quest to Burn decks we introduced earlier are our first recommendations for knocking this one out. We completed this with the Quest to Burn Warlock as we were grinding through Share Your Pain. However, if you'd like to play a deck that doesn't run the questline, our Philosophical Enchantment Warlock is a fun twist on Handlock. Anetheron is a questionable inclusion which you could replace with a second Flesh Giant, but it was fun to drop a second copy of him thanks to Philosophy, and then get a second Rustwix to play in the same game. There is some counter synergy between the Ruined Mithril Rod and Jaraxxus, because although the Rod often helps you get Jaraxxus out several turns earlier, once you've played Jaraxxus, you don't want to break his weapon early to equip a second Rod. As it's a greedy style of control deck, in a meta with so many combo decks, Elusia Priests, and Aggro Shamans, the win rate was low. And yet the games were still quite fun, often allowing us to discount 9 or 10 cards at a time, 2 to 4 times per game. So it's a decently efficient way to knock out the 240 mana discount requirement even with a low win rate. And it's just fun to play a different style of Warlock. But if you want to win a lot, the Quest to Burn Warlock deck from HSReplay is definitely the way to go. Have fun enchanting your hand into swinging faster and harder. And that's a wrap. If you found this helpful, drop a like. Your engagement can act like a Ruined Mithril Rod and enchant the YouTube algorithm into helping others find these guides. We're doing these guides for the rest of the United and Stormwind achievements as well, so check back soon, or subscribe, because the red of that subscribe button might be enough to distract the Bloodbound Imp from looking for something else from you. Okay, that one was a bit too much of a stretch, but yeah, subscribing does help a lot. If you have any questions or suggestions, let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy participating in experiments live, check out our stream at twitch.tv/SSAlchemist. We currently stream on Saturdays and Sundays. And remember, you're awesome. Thank you for watching, and have an awesome day.